In many systems in different countries, you complete your doctorate, your thesis, you hand that in, and it gets examined by examiners that you never meet, who make various recommendations. You then make the corrections, because there's nearly always corrections, and then you become a doctor. And in many other contexts, there is also an oral or viva component to the examination. And this is growing in different countries in different ways. So there is no one standard way to do this. But the idea there is, the idea initially of an oral component or a viva was to ensure that the thesis, the doctoral work that was being examined, was the candidate's own work and hadn't been produced by either somebody they paid to do it, or in the world at the moment, maybe artificial intelligence. That reason for holding a viva is still very popular. But the other reason for holding a viva is to give the opportunity to the candidate to explore with people who know about their work and have read their work, to explore why they did what they did, how they did it, what they feel their contribution is, what their arguments are, and to feel confirmed in the quality of their work. I'm going to talk a little bit then about the processes of going through a viva or an oral from the point of view of the examiners and the point of view of the candidates. The examiners are looking for a quality piece of work that makes a contribution to knowledge from the thesis and in the thesis. They will receive your thesis, and your supervisor, and you maybe as well, will have decided or made suggestions about who the examiners should be. So maybe they're people whose work you've admired and used, and sometimes they're somebody else in the university who is related to work that you've done. You'll usually have an internal examiner, someone else in your university, and an external examiner. And if you're a member of staff, you might have 2 external examiners. And they're chosen, as I said, because they're in your field, and you might well have referenced them already. The examiners, once they agree to examine your work, having seen your abstract, because that's what's usually sent to them, will read your thesis very carefully. They are your second reader. Your first reader was your supervisor. And you know that you were explaining why you did what you did, how you did it, what you found, what constructed, why it mattered, and justifying your decisions through a storyline about the decisions, and explaining the gap, the aims, the research questions, the way you constructed and enacted your work as part of your argument, your contribution to knowledge. So you know you were building this thesis with a story and an argument. The examiners are looking for the coherence of both of these and your novel contribution to knowledge. They get the work, they separately make reports, and if you have a viva, on the day of the viva, they will have read each other's reports, and they talk to each other for about an hour and come up with the questions that they're going to ask you in the viva. And many of these will be why you did what you did, and what you feel you've achieved. And some of them will be questions that have arisen from their reading, where they've seen a very interesting diagram and they'd like you to explain it, or where you've used a theoretical perspective which isn't the one that they would have used, and they'd like you to explain and justify why you used that. And you know why, you know clearly about your own decisions, so you're confident to respond to those sorts of questions. And sometimes they're just interested in the line of argument that you've developed. So they prepare questions, usually, that go systematically through the thesis, and usually start with something which is very general as an opening question, and that is, why did you choose to do this? What was your interest? That really is a question that just expects you to explain your interest and to talk just for a few minutes, and also to relax. So the examiners prepare and you prepare. Let's see how we can think about how you might prepare. You know your thesis. Well, you're really going to know it inside out by the time you get to the viva or oral, because you're not really sure what they're going to ask you. They will ask you about the steps and decisions that you made, and they will also ask you about what you feel you've contributed. So prepare from your thesis some thoughts and answers for those questions. It's not a mystery ride. They will be looking at what you've done and how you've done it and why you feel it matters, and they'll ask you questions about that. Get ready for that. But what you can't predict is their special interests sometimes, or their fascination with a decision that you made halfway through in your methods, or why you are making a particular claim at the end of your thesis of what your work has contributed to knowledge. So you can't predict everything they're going to ask, but you can predict that they're going to ask you why you did it, why you picked this theory, why you picked those methods, why you have, what you think you've found from it and why it matters. Those questions are a skeleton that you pretty much always find. So you can prepare something and then you are ready for surprises, maybe, which is their line of thought, their specialisms, maybe. So the other thing to do is to be very well rested. Make sure you've eaten properly, that you've relaxed before you go into the viva, because it's not every day that we have to talk our way through a very complex piece of work and explain what we expect to explain, and also have to open up bits of it to explain other issues. The viva will probably last about an hour and a half to 2 hours. There will probably also be a chair there, and the chair there is to make sure that you're comfortable and safe, and so is everyone else, and that you have breaks if you need them, and also that the whole thing is conducted properly and professionally. At the end of the viva, you'll probably be asked, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? And if you feel they've missed something at that point, say, yes, I'd just like to tell you about this, or I thought that was amazing. They might also ask you what you want to do next. The point at which the examiners are asking you, are you going to take this to conferences? Are you publishing from it? Have you already published from it? You pretty much know that you're home and dry and that your work has been acceptable. You will get corrections. Everybody gets corrections. But that collegial moment in a discussion that has been collegial all the way through, but also very testing and very probing to show that you know why you did what you did and you know what you produced that matters. At that point, there's a sort of sense of relief because you've kind of been recognised as at doctoral level because they're asking you, where will you publish, where will you present? When the viva is over with, you retire. If your supervisor's been sitting at the back or they've been sitting in another Zoom room, you have a chat with them and diffuse a little bit. The examiners get together and they have a look at the questions they'd asked and the responses you gave, and they come up with some things that they feel that you probably need to do to improve the thesis. There might not be very many things. They might be merely quite cosmetic things to do with typos or where you haven't been quite clear and you need to put a half paragraph in to explain something. They have choices over how they're going to award you at the end of the viva. There's fail, and I haven't seen that happen, but some people might fail. There's revise and resubmit, which means they want you to do quite a lot of work because the thesis and the research is going to be okay in the end probably, but you need to rewrite the thesis, and they're probably going to give you more than a year to do that, and you might or might not have another viva on the end of it. And then there's usually like a 12-month option, and that might be major modifications. That's fine. You've got 12 months to do them, and basically you're going in and explaining something more clearly or maybe having to change something. You probably won't have to go back and do any more data collection. But this is about finessing, clarifying the thesis. That's quite common, about a year to do the work in. We'll talk about how you do that in a second. And the other one is the minor modifications. The time span for that changes in between different universities. It might be 6 weeks, it might be 3 months, it might be 6 months. But what they're basically saying with minor modifications is that there's some technical things or there's some cosmetic things that you need to do. And there are always typos, however much you have gone through and however much somebody else might have helped you looking at making sure you didn't have any typos, you will have some. So those are little tinkerings, cosmetic tinkerings. Shouldn't take you too long to do it. And then what do you do? Okay, and there's possibility of you having to do nothing. And I've only seen that twice in all the vivas that I've been through. So that's rare. Usually people get minors or majors. So what do? You find out on the day what their judgment is, and then they're going to send you a report of what they would like you to do, and possibly also how well they thought you did in other parts of the thesis. Go and talk to your supervisor. Sit with them with these lists of corrections and decide how to approach it. Do a plan, get on top of it immediately, and do it as quickly as you can do, but as thoroughly as you can do. What I suggest is rather like how one responds to reviewers when you've sent something in for publication. Produce a grid. What do the examiners want? On the left-hand side, there's probably a list of 6 things maybe. Your responses to that, basically you do it. It's a bit different to having that conversation with the reviewer and rejecting. You are going to make these changes unless they're really absurd, in which case you'd probably query them. But this is where you're going to be doing it. That's where they're going to find it in the thesis, the exact pages. You send in a cover letter, the grid of what they want you to do and where they can find it, so they can go straight into the thesis, the revised thesis, and find it. Then you send a track change version of your thesis, so they are going to go straight to these color-coded track change bits and find that you have done what you said you did, and they're not going to spend too much extra time poking around in your thesis and finding something else. We don't want that. And then you send the perfect thesis. That will go in probably to the university, to the doctoral college. It will go to the examiners who have a look at your corrections, and maybe both of them sign them off, and maybe only the internal examiners sign them off. And then you're done. You're through. You're ready to cross the stage and get your doctorate.